Wednesday, June 19. In France, the cadets of the Saumur Academy near the Loire River fight bravely to defend the city, but the German army overwhelms them. The German commanders decide not to take the young soldiers prisoner in recognition of the courage they showed on the battlefield. The panzer divisions cross Brittany and take the port of Brest, and further to the south the cities of Nantes and Tours. The British government orders the urgent evacuation of the Channel Islands, while some ships of the French Navy try to find refuge in the ports of southern England and in North Africa. Churchill is determined to show Hitler he will not be easily intimidated. He orders the RAF to attack the French airfields of Rouen and Amiens, which are controlled by the Germans. At the same time, military targets are bombed in the German cities of Hamburg and Bremen. In retaliation, the Luftwaffe carries out attacks on strategic points in southern England, particularly around the mouth of River Thames. Franco, the Spanish dictator, has talks with the representatives of the Nazi government about the possibility of joining the Axis powers. In return for Spanish participation in the war, he wants financial and military aid, as well as the French protectorates of Algeria and Morocco. Hitler ignores his demands. In the Sea War, the German submarines relentlessly attack Allied shipping. U-25, commanded by Heinz Bedouin, sinks the French ship Brumaire. Günter Kunke's U-28 sinks the Greek ship Adamantios. U-32 sinks the Yugoslav ship Labud. U-48, commanded by Hans Ruf Rosing, sinks the British vessel Baron Loudon. And the Norwegian ship Tudor and Otto Salmon's U-52 sinks the British ship the Monarch and the Belgian Vie de Namur. Thursday, June 20th. Throughout France, millions of refugees take to the roads with nothing to eat or drink, exposed to the attacks of the Luftwaffe. The Germans have swept down on Lyon and Vichy in the south of the country. Hitler meets Admiral Erich Raeder, chief of the Kriegsmarine, and expresses his concerns about the French fleet ending up in British hands. Meanwhile, the French cruiser Émile Bethune arrives at the port of Halifax in Canada, loaded with French gold sent there by Paul Reynaud before he resigned. As the ship is preparing to dock, the captain receives orders from Marshal Petain's government to head towards the island of Martinique in the French Antilles. In Paris, Prime Minister Pétain authorizes Japanese troops to be deployed in Tonkin in northern Indochina in order for them to have an easier access to Chinese territory. The U.S. government makes public its displeasure of this. In the U.S., the Democrat President Roosevelt includes in his government two Republicans who believe the United States should end its isolationist stance. Henry Stimson is appointed Secretary of War and Frank Knox, Secretary of the Navy. In London, the British government organizes 4 new call-up campaigns, with which the number of enlisted men reaches 4 million. In the Sea War, the British submarine Clyde attacks the German battleship Gneisenau as it is returning from Norway, inflicting serious damage. Meanwhile, U-122, commanded by Hans-Günther Luft, sinks the British ship Empire Conveyor. Fritz Julius Lemp's U-30 sinks the Otterpool. Heinrich Liebe's U-38, the Swedish Tilla Gorthen, and U-48, captained by Hans Rudolf Rosing, destroys the Dutch vessel Moordrecht. Friday, June 21st. In France, Hitler arrives at the forest of Compiègne. With him are Generals Brauchitsch and Keitel, Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, Field Marshal Göring, Foreign Minister Ribbentrop, and Rudolf Hess. A few minutes later, the French delegation arrives headed by Charles Hunziker, who has come from Bordeaux. The Nazi takes a seat in the old railway carriage in the same place where Marshal Foch sat in 1918. After General Keitel has read the terms, Hitler leaves the meeting in a show of disdain for the French commanders, while a military band plays the German anthem. The terms imposed by the Germans include the surrender of the French army, Nazi control over the Jewish population, an end to freedom of movement, and the payment of reparations. The area to the south of River Loire is to become a separate state with its capital at Vichy and with control over its colonies and a section of the fleet. The French delegation requests some time to discuss these issues with the rest of the government. In the meantime, Mussolini orders his army to invade the Alpine area of southeast France, despite opposition from General Pietro Badoglio. The fortifications of the Maginot Line stall the Italian offensive and cause thousands of casualties, much to the embarrassment of the Italian dictator. In Britain, the RAF loses 37 Blenheim bombers in the fighting with German planes over the English Channel. Saturday, June 22nd. In France, the French delegation, after having consulted with Pétain's government, signs the armistice in the railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne. General Maxime Weygand, chief of the French High Command, orders his armies to decommission their arms and surrender. Hitler, who was given the nickname the Wolf, has achieved an unprecedented victory, defeating his enemies in continental Western Europe in little more than a month and a half. In the south of France, a lumbering Mussolini tries to imitate him, ordering his troops to take over Nice, but his soldiers are unable to advance further than the town of Menton. In response to Hitler's demands that he end the offensive, the ambitious and frustrated Duce argues that France has not yet surrendered to Italy. In the meantime, Italian planes bomb Mersa Matruh in Egypt, seat of the British High Command in Africa, provoking a response from the RAF, which bombs Tobruk in Italian-occupied Libya. The Canadian Parliament, under pressure from Prime Minister William King, passes the Mobilization Act, requiring all citizens over the age of 16 to register for service in the armed forces. In London, Winston Churchill tells the British people the country will continue fighting on land, sea, and air until victory is achieved. In the war at sea, U-122 disappears without explanation. U-30, commanded by Fritz Julius Lemp, sinks the Norwegian Ransford. Hans Genesis U-32 sinks the Norwegian Elly Knudsen. U-38, captained by Heinrich Liebe, sinks the Greek ship Nelson. And Hans von Stockhausen's U-65 sinks the French vessel Minique. Sunday, June 23rd. In France, Prime Minister Marshal Pétain names as vice president of the puppet government of Vichy Pierre Laval, the former chief of government who was sympathetic towards the ideas of Hitler and Mussolini and supported the signing of the armistice with the Germans. He believes the Third Reich should be dissolved and he can count on the approval of the Nazi leader, who considers him a good collaborationist. In Germany, battleship Bismarck is in the shipyards waiting to be updated with 3 new propellers and magnetic equipment. Hitler speaks to Heinrich Himmler about the occupation of France. The idea of the Jews being sent to the French colony of Madagascar is discussed. In London, Prime Minister Winston Churchill refuses to recognize the government of Marshal Pétain. There is no let-up in the activity of German submarines. U-28, commanded by Günter Kuhnke, sinks the British ship Prunella. Heinrich Liebe's U-38 sinks the Belgian vessel Luxembourg. Wilhelm Ambrios's U-43, the English Yaraville, and Gunther Prien's U-47, the San Fernando. U-54, captained by Otto Salmon, sinks the Finnish ship Hilda, and Hans von Stockhausen's U-65 destroys the Dutch vessel Berenice. Monday, June 24th. In Berlin, the propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels declares that our victory has given France a sense of rebirth. Now the British will be forced to sign a peace agreement and comply with our demands, or else suffer the consequences. In Rome, representatives of the French and Italian governments sign an armistice. Mussolini is convinced that the end of World War II has come with a German victory. Hitler does not seek to eliminate the British Empire, as that would only benefit Japan and the US, he tells his son-in-law, Count Galeazzo Ciano, the foreign minister, who feels uneasy about the power accumulated by the Nazi leader, whom he labels a lucky gambler. In the meantime, a group of former French ministers arrives at Casablanca in Morocco, ready to continue the fighting from North Africa. But they face opposition from the Governor General of Morocco, General Charles Noguès, who has already accepted the armistice. From London, General Charles de Gaulle declares over the radio that the new French government has betrayed the agreement signed with Britain. Only we, the National Committee of France, represent you truly. I will never tire of calling on the French to unite and fight together for freedom, dignity, and the honor of our country. In the Battle of the Atlantic, U-47, commanded by Günther Prien, sinks the Panamanian ship Catherine.